everyone, James Nine Numbers here, and welcome back to another episode of the Political Freedom Fighters Podcast. And in this very special episode, I have my very first special guest on. This person agreed to come on to tell me more about, wait for it, the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. And so with that being said, I would like to welcome you all to the room. Rob Yates, how are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I love the energy.
You're welcome. So with that being said, I'm going to get started on the interview. Okay, for the first question is introduction to the people being interviewed and what they do. So tell me about yourself. Like, what do you do?
Oh, I mostly just try and have fun, thrive a little bit. No, so I'm the communications director for the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. Among other things, I'm on the board of the executive committee of Mecklenburg County Libertarian Party. And then in my other life where I have to make money, I'm a husband and a father and a writer and a sports coach, and that's about it. I go to a
Oh,
lot of shows. I like music a whole lot.
oh, that's awesome. A writer and a sports coach. What sports do you teach people or do you coach?
I coach high school wrestling and I coach youth soccer.
Oh, wow, that is really awesome.
I like it. I like it. I like trying to give something back. I played sports back in the day. It's good. It's good. It's good kids play sports. It teaches discipline, keeps you in shape. I certainly am happy that I did. I try to pass a little bit of it along.
That's awesome. All right. The next question. Talk about the history of the North Carolina affiliate of that party. So tell me about the history of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina from then till now.
So it's interesting you mentioned it. Next year we will actually be celebrating our 50th anniversary as an official party. Um, it's a long history. We actually, if you go to lpdia.org, I think, or .com, but it's like the Libertarian Wikipedia, you can find our fairly detailed history. But what I think is interesting is our recent history. So we gained ballot access back in 2008 after losing it for a period. The Uniparty, and when we say the Uniparty, we mean all Republicans and Democrats, fights really, really hard to make sure they don't have competition. As much as they compete against each other, they hate anyone challenging them. So we have had increasingly restrictive ballot access laws. To get on the ballot, if you are not a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian now, but it requires a huge number of signatures. It's tough to get recognized as a party, and then you have to do things to maintain yourself as a party. You have to have a presidential or a governor candidate get 2% of the vote, and we've maintained those. You have to have a certain percentage of people. We are the largest third party affiliate in the United States of America by percentage. So there are more libertarians registered in California, but it's a much bigger state. So we're the second biggest libertarian party, and obviously the second biggest affiliate of any third party. We ran 20% of all state level candidates, third party state level candidates in the United States last year. Um, we've grown. We're up over 50,000 registered. And it's taken a lot of work to get here. A lot of people have worked really, really hard to build this party. And we are just trying to pick up that torch, that Liberty torch, and carry it forward. We're hoping to have, I think we have 7 elected libertarians in the state right now. We'd like to see that number doubled by the end of next year and then doubled again the year after that. Yeah, things are good. It's been a good history. We've fought hard to get some of the things. Hopefully we'll see constitutional carry. We lobbied against this shrimp trawl ban that was at least put aside for the current legislative session. So, yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I gotta say, I gotta congratulate Mike Gross on pulling like 3%, which is like 1% at above the ballot access threshold for governor. Like, how did he do that? Like, it's really tough for a third party to even get like 2%, let alone 3%.
So I was on Mike's campaign team. I'd started as campaign manager, but Kim Acker was just much better than I was, so I became his comms director too, and she was campaign manager. And we really focused on a strategy of like, we're not going to sit here and tell you to hate, fellow Americans, fellow North Carolinians. We're going to offer some real solutions. I think one of the biggest problems libertarians have as a party is quality messaging that resonates with people. We love arguing philosophy. We love getting into the technicalities of things. And people don't necessarily want to hear about like privatizing options for the military. They want to know, how are you going to make my grocery bill less? How does this help my kids get a better education? And so with Mike's campaign, we came out, we ran on, 4 or 5 key planks, but we really pushed those and we explained, here's how we're going to make the state safer. Here's how our policies will improve education. Here's how we're going to help the economy. And I think it resonated with people. And then Mike did every event he could. We don't have the money that they do. We can't buy all the TV spots, all the radio spots the way they do. But he showed up to every town hall. He did every podcast, every online meeting, going to churches, whatever it may be, any place they had a political gathering that he could get on. And a lot of times these are places that are very heavily Republican or very heavily Democrat, but we just went in and talked and the message resonates.
All right, that's awesome. So, why did you join the Libertarian Party?
So I think I've been a libertarian since I was born, and I didn't realize it at first. I came up in like a fairly old school Republican household, and I liked the ideas that they talked about. I was like, yeah, you should have less government, like accountability, self ownership. No one has a right to tell me what to do, and I don't have a right to tell anyone else what to do. And then I got to high school, and I realized that Republicans were a bunch of giant hypocrites because they want to say they want small government and you can't legislate morality, but then they like want to tell you who you can marry and they want to throw people in a cage for smoking weed. And I was like, well, this is ridiculous. So I don't know what I'm doing until that presidential election when Ron Paul ran. And I'm watching the debates and listening to Ron Paul. And I was just like, wow, like he's speaking to me. I think I found my home. So I've been an unofficial, a small L libertarian, as we would call it, since then. I registered independent in Virginia, where I lived at the time. But like in college, I started reading Reason magazine. It was heavily influenced me coming up. Um, I got married. We actually moved to China for a couple years, and then moved back here. Got for one more year, and then to North Carolina right after that. And I've been registered libertarian officially since then. So,
That's awesome. I guess that's a follow up question. How was China?
ha. So so I lived in Hong Kong technically. We traveled a lot of China, but it was after the takeovers. I mean, 10 years after the takeover. So you didn't have the national security law yet, but you were definitely starting to see some of the heavy Chinese influences, but then also just traveling all over China. And like I will just say this, as many problems as there are in the US right now, as much as our government has far exceeded its authority as defined in the Constitution, we're lucky to be here. Like, live in a communist country, see what it does to people, see how they are, and then complain about our freedoms. I'm fighting for never turning into that because it can get pretty bad. Individual when you come up with the attitude that the collective is more important than individual rights, then individual people are just sort of worthless. And you see it in the way people are treated.
Yeah, the concept of a collective one party dictatorship has always concerned me in North Carolina because in North Carolina, I believe in our past for most of our state's history, we were a one party dictatorship under the Democrats. And that has gone away, but with the Republicans, I'm afraid of it like coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's one thing we were really happy about this last election is we broke the Republican supermajority in the legislature. And I think a lot of that had to do with them just failing on constitutional carry. They had House Bill 189, I want to say, I forget what it was, but it would have been full constitutional carry in North Carolina. And it was a couple years ago, it was ready to go to the floor, and then they just decided they weren't going to bring it to a vote. And I can't prove this, but I've heard from people who know that the NRA was calling some of the people it funds and telling them we don't want constitutional carry because we want all those sweet fees that people have to pay to get their concealed carry licenses from us. And so the Republicans just kind of wimped out. But they're cowards too. They hate freedom just as much as Democrats.
Yeah, that's true. So, with that being said, I'm going to go over the most interesting parts of your platform, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to pull up the platform right now. You guys probably won't be able to see it on my screen, but that's okay. I guess the first one I'm going over is cryptography. I'm gonna go read the stance first, and then I'll see like why the party has like that specific stance. So with that being said, apparently according to the Libertarian parties of North Carolina, they have a stance on cryptography. It says that the LPNC maintains that the safety, security, privacy, and integrity that cryptography achieves should not be encumbered, limited, or weakened by government. We contend that a free market pursuing quality and innovation in the best interest of its customers never should be forced to betray the trust of those customers by being compelled to weaken or degrade its offering. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of people even know what cryptography is. I don't think I've seen it in any other party's platform. So, what is cryptography and why does the party have a stance on it?
So it's funny you say that. I've listened to that. I'm like, I've never actually read that plank before. I mean, I'm sure I have it, just never noticed. But that's got to be old, because I mean, that's 20 years ago, right? Like, uh, it would be, and maybe I'm getting this completely wrong, but isn't that like the government restricting the levels of encryption that you can put onto messaging or computer stuff?
Hmm.
Or maybe I'm getting it completely wrong, and this is something that's archaic, and we need to come out of there.
I don't know if it's archaic, if the government is actually like spying on our computers or what. It's possible. I mean, it's very much possible. I feel like the government's kind of been after me, like by blocking my internet connection over the past few weeks on during meetings where I was supposed to meet with like third parties to attend and talk about stuff. Like last Monday, I when I attended a Constitution Party meeting, my internet was like cut off and on during their party's meeting, so I ended up missing like some important things. And then on last Thursday, right before I was going to attend a North Carolina Green Party Left Unity study group, like my internet, even though it was supposed to be technically working, my apparently it said like my DNS server wasn't working, so I couldn't connect to the internet or whatever. But luckily, it ended up turning back on, and but my internet did end up cutting on and off a bit since then. And earlier today, there was like a heavy thunderstorm, and my internet was not like working for like a few hours. But luckily, I was able to get it back on. Yeah, I'm gonna need to look more into cryptography, but yeah, I am concerned about the government being involved in being in our messages and all that.
And that's I always hesitate to say, like, I love a good conspiracy theory, but I'm always like, it's important to look for the practical explanation before you go conspiracy, because
Yeah.
otherwise everything becomes a conspiracy. But that being said, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. Like, the FBI now has the power to spy on Americans without a warrant as well with this last FISA vote. And both of our we have the worst representatives from North Carolina. Republicans and Democrats are all terrible in Congress, except for who ran for Attorney General against Jeff Jackson. I can't think of his name. Dan Bishop. He was the one person that voted for our freedom. All the rest of them hate freedom. They voted for the FBI to be allowed to spy on us along with the NSA. And so, yeah, it's important. Like, the government should not be able to limit the degree to which we can encrypt our messages. They don't have a right to see what we're saying. I love the line in V for Vendetta: "The people should not be afraid of their government. The government should be afraid of its people."
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, with that being said, the next policy I want to go over is transportation. Transportation. The LPNC proposes giving private enterprise the opportunity to come up with innovative transportation solutions without government interference. Current roads should be maintained by private enterprise until such time as they can be transferred to private ownership. I guess I would like to see an explanation going into more detail on that.
So it's sort of the cliche, like, anti-libertarian argument that we have to deal with. Like, so what about the roads? Who will build the roads? And the answer is pretty simple. The people who build the roads now will still build the roads. The government doesn't build the roads. What the government does is takes our money, takes a cut of it, and then pays people to build the roads. So without government interference, we'd get roads built more cheaply. They'd have to compete for the projects. They'd go in the places that they needed to go, not where the government decided to put them. I think that I will say this: if we got to a place where, government did almost nothing except build roads, all right, fine. If that was the one thing we had to cede, I don't think it'd be a huge deal. But we pay all sorts of taxes. We pay gas tax. I just paid property tax, which is disgusting. It's evil, and people that collect property tax should all like get stabbed in the knee with a pencil. Property tax, I have to pay to own my thing. If I have to pay tax to be able to own it, then I don't really own it, do I? But I just paid $330 to be allowed to drive the car that I own for another year. Um, but and what does that go to? It goes to the giant pothole that cost me $1,000 a few months ago because they can't keep the roads up. So, but who gets fired? Who's held accountable? No one. They say we hold people accountable at the ballot box. No one pays attention to who they're voting for, especially not locally. It's a sham. So we get challenged a lot on like, well, who would do this? How would it work out? And my answer is like, it's not working out that great right now. Like there are a lot of opportunities to do these things better, and the roads are certainly one of them. And also, we say we switch the roads, but like, look at California's hypertrain. I mean, they've spent what, like $2 billion or something, and they've built exactly 0 miles of rail in 20 years. They've done 7 environmental studies. They've paid a whole lot of people. I mean, it's ridiculous. But instead, with private enterprise, you'd have, like it says, innovative transportation solutions, fast trains where they belong, other ways of getting around where they belong for closer things. Ride sharing programs, bicycle ride sharing programs, some of these things that government tries to force in areas it wants them to work would sprout up and develop because there'd be a market for them.
All right, great. Let's see the next stance that I want to go over. Oh, the ABC and the state lottery. I don't think anyone else has
Ugh.
a stance on that either, so let's go over that. The LPNC calls for state government to cease operation of business and otherwise ban services such as alcohol distribution and gambling, lottery. The notion that lottery profits go to otherwise tax funded education is a fraud upon the people. Private enterprise will serve customers of such services better and more favorably.
So first of all, hashtag abolish the ABC. ABC is an easy one. It needs to go. It, it's a racket. It is a criminal enterprise. Go look at the salaries that some of so let me rewind a little bit. North Carolina is uniquely terrible in its ABC management process. There's the central one, and then every county has its own ABC affiliate as well. Some of these people are making two or $300,000 in counties with like 15,000 people in 3 ABC stores. It's ridiculous. And we're just paying out the wazoo for this, right? To go in and then pay them a ton more for this liquor that they put taxes, state tax on, and they regulate and moderate. They essentially, um it's not blackmail, it's pay to play fraud. Here's your liquor license, and we'll come in and take it away from you if you don't follow our exact specification weird rules. The ABC needs to go. The ABC is a criminal enterprise. They should all be prosecuted. The
Okay.
lottery,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
feel a little bit different personally. I think the big problem, well, first of all, the lottery is, if you have a little bit of money, like, it's fun, right? Like, okay, go out, play the lottery, buy some lotto tickets. I usually buy a couple lottery tickets every week, and I mean 1 or 2, because 'cause I'm like, "It's fun." I check the numbers, hoping I hit the jackpot. I know I'm not going to, but I win $5 here and there, and it's fun. But it can be a tax on poor people who really start spending money they don't have trying to get rich. But the big problem with the application of lottery money is that it's supposed to go to education, and there's this workaround that the government does. So the lottery money goes to education, but then they take the amount out of the education fund allocations and spend that on other things and replace it with lottery money. So it's not really growing the education budget, it's going to other things, and they're using this loophole. When in Mike's governor plan, he had this free market education concept. So the North Carolina Constitution does require that we educate every child. So to stay within those parameters, Mike's idea was take all the education money, comes out to about $13,000 a student, give or take, and just give that money to each kid. Any child under the age of 18 and 18-year-olds who aren't finished high school, they have access to up to $13,000 a year. This takes care of all early childhood care. So, this whole we need public childcare. Like, no, just give parents access to the money. You put it in a bank, give them a debit card. So you can spend this on anything you want that counts as education. So schools have to compete for kids. Good teachers can hold micro schools. Parents can homeschool. It forces the education programs to get better. Um, but you so because our public schools are terrible. We need to get rid of public schools as fast as we need to get rid of the ABC. I mean, it's disgusting what they do to kids, and then they ask for more money, and they've got this administrative bloat going on. That'd be gone in a second. None of this government-run nonsense with teachers' unions, even though we don't aren't technically a public union state. Like the NEA has its headquarters in Raleigh. I mean, it's their influence is outrageous. They'd be gone in an instant. All of this public sector failure would be gone, and people would compete to get or schools would compete to get kids because people want a good education for their children. And you could keep the lottery, and in Mike's plan, the lottery money would not be allowed to be used as a reimbursement for allocations already made for education, but for all students so that we could still acknowledge and meet, the federal level requirements for education. Any students that did well against federal requirements would receive a bonus evenly distributed amongst from the lottery money.
All right. I guess going back to the ABC for a second, what should be the penalty? What kind of penalty should the ABC pay for their sins?
Yeah, I gotta watch myself. I think throw them in jail for the rest of their lives. No, all of these government criminals are acting the way they are because we are enabling them. And I would be fine if there was no reckoning, no repercussions, but we just took all their power away, took their stolen money away, took away all the laws that they use to play lawfare with people, all the contradictory laws that they face, get rid of all the occupational licensing stuff that they lord over us, take away ABC's power to regulate alcohol whatsoever, and just go from there. And the reward, instead of focusing on the punishment, the reward would be how well the state did and how much everyone benefited from getting the government out of their lives.
All right, that's awesome. All right, next up, annexation. Again, I don't think anyone else has a plank on annexation, so this is going to be fun. Annexation. No person shall have a government forced upon them without consent. The LPNC rejects the ideas of involuntary annexation and extraterritorial jurisdiction, ETJ. Where government exists, persons must retain the right to join or leave them voluntarily without repercussions.
So, I mean, particularly start with just this is a blanket policy. Look at eminent domain. Look how this is weaponized against people. And you wanna see some people get real mad in North Carolina. Ask hillbillies from the mountains about the state using eminent domain to destroy their land. I have friends who have ancestral graveyards that are underwater because of how terrible the state is at everything it does. More broadly speaking, like, I mean, sure, we recognize that whether we like it or not, to some extent, there are governments that get smaller as you get more decentralized, but that have certain laws that we have to recognize and abide by within their jurisdictions. And if they're laws that are designed to protect people and property from violence, theft, assault, and intrusion by the government, then we're not going to make that much noise about it. But when you start having things like ETJs where zoning restrictions are being enforced in a place that isn't even within the boundaries where that jurisdiction should be able to enforce zoning restrictions, that gets ridiculous. Like you don't live in this county, but we have jurisdiction here, so we're telling you you can't put this silo here or whatever it may be. And there have been cases of this. We have a guy out of Wake, Brian Lewis, who's been fighting some of this tooth and nail. But we are against all annexation, all eminent domain, all violations of the Fourth Amendment protections by police. I mean, your property should be your property.
Yeah, that's actually pretty fair. With that being said, the next up is local government monopolies. The LPNC challenges local and county governments to allow private solutions for basic needs. We call for free and open competition in all areas that have been previously reserved to government granted monopolies, including but not limited to utilities, police, and fire protection.
So this is one where I can see both sides. I'm uh there are many flavors of libertarian, ranging from your full on ANCAPs, ANCOMs to like your classical liberal. So I'm what's called a minarchist. So I actually believe in the existence of government to protect person and property. So I don't mind. I'm going to try to be kind. I have some very strong issues with the police the way they are right now, but I do believe in a public peace force to stop things like murder and rape and theft. I do believe in a public fire department to keep people's property from burning down. Um, and what was the third one oh, utilities. Utilities, if we're going to make them government utilities, then make them government utilities. This whole like it's a private utility, but it has a government protected monopoly. That's the worst for me because they face zero accountability whatsoever. You can't even vote them out. So at least with a truly public utility, you could vote things out if they're being done wrong. I do recognize that the concept of competition for utilities like water can get tricky as pipes are being put in and taken out. And that's where government may have a role at a very decentralized level. But for things like electricity, power can be a lot easier to put in. Duke has an essentially a monopoly. They're poisoning the rivers. I mean, the coal ash spill in the Dan River, they operate without any accountability, with no scrutiny over what they're doing. And that's this government appointed monopoly. And the only thing worse than a state run program is a private run program designated by the state with the protection of the government's monopoly on violence.
Okay, that fair enough. Okay, next up, bonds. The LPNC calls for state and local governments to take action to pay off existing bonds as quickly as possible and refrain from the issuance of new bonds.
I even hate the word bonds. All they're saying is we're going to raise your taxes in the future. Like that's all they're saying. We're going to borrow money now and jack your taxes up in the future because it's not popular to ask for a tax raise right now. But people do it. And then you look at the things they use it on, and we should be infuriated. The city of Charlotte has given, I wish I had the numbers, but we gave a couple hundred million, something like 275 million a few years ago to build a professional tennis center. And not just to build the center, but so this guy tried to buy the Panthers and he didn't win. And so we gave him almost $300 million so he could build a professional tennis center on the promise that we'd get some tennis tournament that we didn't get. It's the greatest boondoggle and one of the biggest failures in the history of a city. And so what do we go and do? We authorize 600 million to another billionaire to renovate his stadium so that his little playground for millionaires we're paying for. And a lot of this was paid. Now there were some taxes increased too. They put a tax increase on some tourist things that are like I forget exactly what it covers, but it's all targeted for tourists eating and buying because those shops don't need to make money. So we'll just take from them. But we all pay more taxes so that David Tepper and this other guy, these poor little billionaires don't have to spend their money on their big playgrounds for millionaires. And I think that's criminal. I forget the other two who voted against it, but shout out to Renee Johnson, um, my representative, who I disagree with her very strongly on some things, but she is one of the few that will consistently vote to not waste the people's money on ridiculous things like this.
200 million and 300 million, that's a lot of money.
I wish I could look it up to see the way it exactly breaks down because some of it was county, some was state, some was Mecklenburg, but it was in the hundreds of millions they're taking from Mecklenburg, and like we don't have that much money.
Damn. All right. Next question. Political contributions. The LPNC calls for an end to all limits on a person's right to support the constitutionally eligible person of his choice. The right to freedom of expression must include the unrestricted right to pay for dissemination of one's opinion.
So while I strongly agree with this plank, I really don't like the way that it is structured because I think people hear that and they immediately hear like, everyone wants to quote unquote get money out of politics. And the truth is, you will never get money out of politics. If there is power to be bought, then money will find a way to buy that power. If you want to eliminate the malign influence of money in politics, then you need to take the power away from the politicians. instead of focusing on things like limiting how much money someone can give to a politician's campaign, which is a complete all that does is prevent you and me from giving a lot of money to people we like, while the companies with money, they create super PACs and then they just pour all their money into the campaign and pretend like that's not what it's for. It's ridiculous. That's just a law hurting people who aren't super rich. Don't focus on how much money people are giving to politicians. Focus on how much power politicians are giving themselves with that money.
All right, fair enough. All right, next, recording in public. Individuals enjoy an absolute right to record anything in any public space with photo, sound, video, or any other means, including but not limited to recording law enforcement.
Yeah, if you're listening to this right now, I encourage you, anytime you see a cop doing anything, turn that video camera on. Hold public officials accountable. And I say cops at first. Cops have a gun and a badge, and they're backed by the violence of the state to take away your life and liberty. So, as frontline soldiers, they have to be held accountable and watched up front. But do this anytime you interact with a public official, a county clerk, an elected representative, you know, somebody from the utilities department, whomever it may be. If you're interacting with a public official, record it. You have 100%. The Supreme Court has determined time and time again, you are absolutely allowed to record public officials, including law enforcement officers. You have to stay 10 feet back from the scene of an arrest or a traffic stop. You might need to give them a little more space, but not much if you're not interfering for other sorts of arrests. You can record them in public. There is zero expectation of privacy, another determination by the Supreme Court. If a cop tries to stop you, get that on video, get that person's name and badge number. That is a violation of your civil rights. Cops are aware of this. It's one of the few areas they will not be able to pull qualified immunity, and you can arrest them for kidnapping. They try to arrest you for it.
All right. All right, next one. The North Carolina National Guard. The LPNC opposes the unconstitutional deployment of the North Carolina National Guard as an instrument of U.S. foreign policy. Neither the NCNG nor any member should be released from the state into active duty combat unless the U.S. Congress has declared war pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the U.S. Constitution, and only for the express and explicit purposes enumerated in the Constitution to, quote unquote, execute the laws of the Union, unquote, repel an invasion or suppress an insurrection. We call upon the NC General Assembly to enact legislation prohibiting deployment of the State National Guard unless Congress and the President of the United States have complied with this constitutional mandate.
Yeah, there's actually the Libertarian Party, the National Party, has been pushing this Defend the Guard movement, and it's starting to catch fire. Like, I think it's passed in like 13 states now. But of course, I will say that National Guard members don't necessarily like this rule because they make a lot more money when they deploy and they get better equipment. But that just goes to show why we should do it. Like, we're just pouring more money into our military, which is completely unaccountable for everything it does and says. You want to talk about power with zero accountability, it's the military. And I'm not talking about individual soldiers. I'm talking about the people at the top who use the power of our military to secure political and financial wins, which is exactly what the military industrial complex does. But the National Guard is a state institution by each state. It is here to protect North Carolina. It is here to deal with flooding from Hurricane Helene or flooding in eastern North Carolina 7 years ago from what was it, Matthew and the other one, I can't think of the two, or Michael, back to back. But Wilmington got hit hard. The National Guard should be there. They shouldn't be over playing police force or, killing people from another country just because our federal government decided to do so, and especially in an undeclared war. And we've been at war for 30 some years now, and none of it has been declared.
Yeah, and especially with the whole Israel-Iran thing that's been going on recently. And apparently there's
Yep,
supposed to be like some sort of ceasefire. I'm not sure if that has held. I think it has held since then a bit, but I'm not sure if it's been broken yet. I don't think so,
we'll
but
see.
yeah,
I'm not holding my breath.
me neither. And wow, we've gone through 9 stances really fast. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to go over a few more stances if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right. I guess I should talk about the war on drugs. Oh, this is a long one. All right. Since the beginning of the LPNC, we have called for the end to the policy of drug prohibition. While we do not advocate the use of recreational drugs, it has become obvious that the enforcement of drug prohibition is more harmful to society than the legal use of recreational drugs could ever be. We call for the legalization of all recreational drugs and the pardon of individuals convicted solely on nonviolent drug charges. As a first step to proving the value of lifting these prohibitions, we call for the immediate legalization of marijuana production and use for medical, recreational, and industrial purposes in North Carolina.
So I don't even like the term legalization. I prefer the term decriminalization because legalization implies that the government has the authority to tell you what you can and can't put into your own body. The idea that you could take a human being and lock that person in a cage for ingesting a substance in his or her own basement is absurd and antithetical to every single ideal on which this country was founded. And I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm not advocating for drug use or against drug use. I'm advocating against the government being involved in your private business in any way, shape, or form. It gives, police turn into Gestapo when they quote unquote smell marijuana. And then that's probable cause to search people's car. They create reasons to arrest people because they need to keep feeding the whole prison industrial complex. These private prisons need public money, so you got to get people stuffed in there. But yeah, we need to end the war on drugs immediately. Drugs is winning the war on drugs, and we're losing. People are losing.
Yep, I agree. I guess next up is Hmm. How about free association? The LPNC supports the right of individuals in any commercial or social circumstance to associate or not to associate with others as they see fit, or as they see fit.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty easy one. You walk into my store and I don't want to serve you, then I shouldn't have to serve you. And I know that there is some conflict here, potential discrimination rules, the Civil Rights Act. If we got to a place where here's the way I look at it. If I'm a baker and you walk in and want to buy a cake off the shelf, and the rule is that I can't refuse to sell you that cake for discriminatory reasons, okay, I'm fine with that. But then if the rule is that I have to make you a cake that is against my beliefs for discriminatory reasons, I'm against that. So like the baker in Colorado that didn't want to make the cake for the gay wedding, I'm all for gay weddings. Um, I would like to smoke a joint while holding an automatic weapon at my gay friend's wedding. Like that's my dream world. But I don't think someone should be forced to bake a cake for anything that that person doesn't believe in. And so when it comes down to freedom of association, I really think that some of the discrimination that you saw institutionalized earlier in our country's history would have actually fallen apart more quickly without the government enforcing things like association. I think the Civil Rights Act, it's not that I disagree with the spirit behind it. I think that it might have been counterproductive over time.
Okay. Well, and the way I see about freedom of association, I don't even think about like the wedding. I think about like joining or not joining a political party and so on and so forth.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a big part of it too. And they shouldn't be able to prevent you.
Yep. Unfortunately, all the third parties except for the Libertarians and Greens are going to be kicked off the ballot because they didn't reach an impossible threshold of 2%, which I personally think is bullshit.
I'm 100% with you. I don't even think there should be established political parties. You want to run, go run.
Yeah, and especially like for the statewide offices. For third parties, it already was hard enough. I remember the whole thing about the Green Party from 2022 and what happened to the Constitution, Justice for All, and We the People parties last year. You guys had like a rally in like back in June, and the parties even together on July 9th, like on the same day that the Constitution Party was eventually certified as a party. Before then, you guys also like signed like a letter of some sort to the North Carolina State Board of Elections demanding the certification.
I wrote that letter. Um, and we were the ones, LPNC were the ones that initiated it, but we got, I think, 7 other parties or representatives from 7 other parties to sign on. Yeah, I mean, how crazy is that? As draconian as the restrictions are for getting a party recognized to be on the ballot in North Carolina, 3 other parties reached those thresholds. And then the Democrats, who are corrupt as hell, all of them in North Carolina, said, "Well, that's gonna hurt our candidate, so we don't want you on the ballot." And that was literally it. You're gonna hurt our candidate, so we're gonna find some nonsense reason to keep you off the ballot. And they got destroyed in the court case for it because they're corrupt. Just a couple years before that, 3 independents sued Governor Cooper, saying that the restrictions on who can be on the board of elections, having to be Republicans or Democrats, were unconstitutional. And Cooper used a whole bunch of our stolen tax money to fight independents in court, even though unaffiliated is now the biggest category in North Carolina. They're more unaffiliated than Republicans or Democrats. They can't get representation because Republicans and Democrats hate competition. The Uniparty hates competition, and there's no difference between the two.
I agree. The Democrats and Republicans are evil, and that's why I will do the best that I can to never bring them onto this show.
Nice.
All right, next up. Ooh, zoning and property use. This one's going to be interesting. Zoning and property use. The LPNC calls for the repeal of all zoning ordinances. In their place, we uphold the right of private owners to use and develop their property as they see fit, and the rights of their neighbors to be protected from any direct harm caused by such use. We call for the elimination of all laws that dictate to homeowners how they will build, inhabit, or use their property, and of all regulations that increases the cost of housing. We encourage people to establish private contractual relationships that promote harmonious land use and development.
Yeah, I would say I mostly agree with that. I do think that this is where a decentralized government can have some small degree of influence for things that can actually harm people. And it does mention that in the plank, but I think that could be difficult to enforce without, some lawfare behind it. So like maybe zoning for a sewage treatment plant can't be within a certain like mileage of residential areas because of toxic fumes or whatever it may be. But yeah, for the most part, if I own the property, who's the government to tell me what to do with it? If they can do it, then I don't really own the property.
Fair enough. All right, let's see what else I would like to. Ooh, federal grants. Oh, this is going to be a good one. The LPNC calls for state and local governments to turn away all federal grants and the restrictions and mandates that come with them. We call on the federal government to release control and funding over these programs to the state and to the people.
That's a tricky one, I know, because that sweet, sweet federal money, they want it coming in, but it does come with the restrictions and the requirements. How about they just stop taking our money and we'll stop taking theirs? And that should all work out. We don't need the inflation that comes with all these federal grants anyway. With $6.5 trillion federal government, it's disgusting. It's absurd, and they fund it with our stolen money. And when they need to make up the difference, they just print more money so that the rest of the money they haven't stolen is worth less. And then they pour it into, police, for example. Here's more money for your cops, but you also have to build Cop City in Charlotte, which they're trying to build a Cop City in Charlotte right now. Um, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If they're giving you something, then they expect something for it, and you should be very afraid of what that is.
Yep. Okay, let's see what else is there. You know what? Body camera records. All right. Police body camera records should be available upon request to any person.
So this is a plank we got put in finally, officially, I think last year when we did a update for our planks at the Constitution, or at the Constitution, at the convention, excuse me. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward one. I actually don't think it goes far enough. I think that it should be a law that police have their body camera on at all times and that they should never be able to turn the audio off. And that if a cop is caught not recording something or turning his or her audio off, then any testimony from that cop should be invalid. We should assume that the cop is lying when the body camera footage is off. Further, body camera should be public information. The second it's done, it should be uploaded to a website and we should be able to access it with 2 caveats. I'm 100% fine with blurring out or eliminating things that could identify a victim or a minor. We should protect them. But even there, I don't think it should be up to the cops whether or not that gets hidden. It should be up to the victim or the minor's parents, because there's a good chance it shows the cop doing something wrong to that person too, and the cop should not be able to hide behind this. There was a case that we got real involved in when two cops assaulted a homeless veteran, Joshua Rohrer. They tased him, arrested him for 3 days. They tased his service dog, who then was ended up getting hit by a car and killed. Joshua tried to take his own life when he got out of jail. I mean, these cops are they're criminals. They should be in jail, these cops. But the body camera footage showed all of it. And the cops, because right now you have to petition to see body camera footage and the courts have to grant it. And the police fought against the release of the body camera footage because, according to them, Joshua could not get a fair trial if the video of what happened got out in the public. So, like, if we knew what happened, that would prevent a fair trial. But this shows what disgusting liars these cops can be. Um, Finally, Joshua copped a plea to lesser charges. The thing ended. We went and fought for this for like 9 months, and Mike Ross was leading the charge a lot of the way, which is kind of where he got started in being active as a politician. And then when the body camera footage came out, it was worse than we had imagined. Like, this one cop who you could just tell got off on hurting people just to discuss it. You know what? I shouldn't say bad things about this cop. Guy is documented suffering from PTSD, ex-soldier. He shouldn't be in situations that can trigger PTSD as combat. But he asked Joshua for his ID, and Joshua took out his VA ID. And he said, "This doesn't have an address on it," because I guess Joshua had somebody who's registered, even though it's living on the streets. Should but my other ID is expired. And apparently the psycho cop didn't like that, and he tased Joshua. And then he said that the service dog bit him. The video shows that this dog is 6 feet away from the guy. Like, he's just lying. Officer Brooks and Officer CR was the other one with him. Tased the service dog. I mean, this guy should be in jail. But there's finally a federal lawsuit. The cops, of course, tried to fight back on qualified immunity. They pushed back on 4 points, but they only got one, so the federal lawsuit is able to go forward. And I hope that Joshua wins big. But the sick part is that even if he does, he'll get paid and he deserves it. But he's going to get paid with taxpayer money. These cops will suffer no consequences for assaulting someone. They should be in jail.
I agree. I wonder how long they should be in prison for.
Full assault, attack on a homeless vet, attack on a disabled person, I'd put them in for 10 years. And they should have to wear a thing that says they used to be cops in prison, and then get treated the way they treat people.
Yeah. All right, next up, the sale of government lands and assets. The LPNC calls for state and local governments to privatize lands and assets. We call for a fair and open process to liquidate these lands and assets at maximum value. The proceeds from these sales should be used to eliminate bond debt.
That's interesting. That's an old plank. We just haven't brought it back up. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally okay with some public lands if there's going to be a government, parks, national parks, state parks. But what is important to remember is that if we are going to have public lands, then they are public. They are not government lands. So, like a federal or a state house building, there's not some extra level of protection that a representative gets because he or she is in this building. Like, it's open to the public. You answer to the people. If we are going to have that, that has to be the attitude around it. It's not some secret place that the public is forbidden from. It is a public building for, of, and by the public.
Makes sense? And jury nullification. I forgot. Well, I don't know how I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm going to go read that right now. Jury nullification. The LPNC recognizes the right of juries to judge not only the accused, but also the law through jury nullification. We favor requiring judges to inform juries of this right.
Do you know how far that would go if judges just told jury at the beginning, under the United States Constitution, you have the right to say this person essentially is not guilty, not because you don't think the person violated the law, but because you think the law itself violates the Constitution, and this person should be found not guilty on that basis. I think that would do amazing things because I think people on jury duty, and I've had jury duty and sat through a full trial. I think you come out with the strong feeling that you have to be in like the way to serve your civic duty. And for the record, I think the way things are set up right now, that's important. If you get that jury duty summons, go. Pay attention. Like someone's livelihood, life can hang in the balance. Take that seriously. These people that are like, I'm trying to get out of jury duty, that kind of pisses me off. Like that's a serious thing. Like it is your opportunity to participate directly in somebody's freedom potentially. But you go in and your entire perspective is I need to determine if the prosecution proves, beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed acts that violate this law as written. And if there was this additional category of even if I think that, does that matter? Should this person still go to prison for these or whatever it may be, suffer some consequence for these things? And if the answer is I don't think so, this is a stupid law, I think you'd see some of these stupid laws start to disappear.
Fair enough. Let's see what else I want to do. Mm, uh, you know what? Privacy. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Let's go to privacy for a second. The LPNC opposes any attempts by government to collect information on the people, except in the constitutionally required performance of its duties. All personal information required by government must be kept confidential and not used or shared except directly for the purpose for which it was gathered.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I believe this one so strongly, but the fact is, like, privacy is almost dead. If the government wants to know something about you, the government knows stuff about you. If they want to find a way to use it against you, they will. I think that the best thing we could do on a federal level is get rid of the NSA, the Department of Homeland Security. I would cut the FBI down to like the serial killer and kidnapping divisions, and that's about it. Um, you know, I have this whole theory that I've sort of been developing, and there's two aspects to it on how to improve like just law enforcement in the United States. And one is I don't think there should be any discretion allowed with law enforcement. If a cop observes someone violating the law or the cop believes that person is violating the law, then the cop has to arrest that person. And then prosecutors have to charge that person. And there's no more plea deals. And there's only one sentence. There's no maximum or minimum. You can't get less or more time. I think, for example, if a cop got someone going 46 and a 45 and then had to pull that person over, had to write a ticket, and that person had to face a $500 fine, people would start paying attention to who they're voting for a lot more. And it would go all the way up. So you would get all these stupid laws off the book. So some of the spying stuff wouldn't matter. There'd be no incentive to do it because there wouldn't be anything to hold over people. And then I think the second side of it is I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So we need to assume we're being spied on essentially. But then we need to from the top down get rid of all the laws on the books that would make this spying matter. So when you have the Department of Homeland Security trying to create a disinformation board where it's going to go after essentially speech and wants to, appoint this banshee woman as the disinformation czar, and then it's saying that people that don't trust the government or who don't think the government should be able to mandate a jab, a medical procedure, are potentially domestic terrorists. Like if you take away their ability to do that, then a lot of the spying stuff starts to disappear.
All right. And I guess we can do like one more, and I guess we can do one on pollution. Let's see here. Where is this pollution? Okay, there it is. Pollution. Pollution causes harm to people and property on a mass cycle. The LPNC calls for the repeal of all laws that protect polluters from full liability for their actions. Those responsible for acts of pollution must provide full restitution to their victims.
So this is actually one that's like very near and dear to me. I've worked in, the famous ESG. I've worked in that field for 16 or 17 years in different ways now. And I think that the environment is very important. I think that when you talk about collective responsibility, whether we like it or not, we all have a shared responsibility for the earth we live on because things we do in fact affect other people to some small degree. I do think global warming is real. I don't think it's an existential crisis, but I think it's something to pay attention to. But more broadly, I think that eliminating the things that cause global warming, cause ocean acidification, cause barren areas and destroy vegetation, change ecosystems, cause deserts to form or grow. These are all things that are pretty easy to combat. But when you allow government monopolies or when you don't hold polluters accountable for the pollution, then they have no incentive to change. So you look at, as I mentioned earlier, Duke Energy spills, a whole lot of coal ash into the Dan River. And they essentially determined the penalty they would pay. Regulators backed it up because Duke Energy owns them and they could never be sued. And now there's like up in Huntersville and all around the area where the spill was, the increase in thyroid cancer was something like 170%. Like it's outrageous. It's 10 times what you would expect in that area. And Duke Energy never has to do anything about it or face any consequences because they signed a deal that the people had no say in whatsoever with regulators. And they're done. They had to pay a couple $100 million. They jacked up their rates to pay for it. And they're sitting on boards talking about environmental protection. The government protects polluters. I have a proposal for a 26th Amendment to the Constitution, which basically says the government shall not be allowed to protect from immunity or provide immunity or protect from liability any person, entity, or institution in which the government has any degree of financial interest whatsoever. So any company that pays taxes, any public entity that is funded by the government, like the police, all of these organizations are not allowed to get liability protection. We can sue all of them. You would see this clean up real fast.
All right, that's going to do it for the platform section. So I just got a few more questions. Okay, next question is, how is the party doing? And what is the party doing right now if possible?
So a stand up absolute basis, I think we're doing very well. Like I said, 50,000 registered libertarians. We're the biggest affiliate by percentage and the second biggest by number in the country. We've seen a lot of growth. We ran, I think, 52 candidates, 45 stayed with their races. We have 7 who have been elected. We're seeing advancements in defend the guard legislation because of the constitutional carry ball that the Republicans fumbled. So obviously, we prevented them from having a supermajority. We've been working with Democrats on some legalization of cannabis legislation. We're just seeing advancement in a lot of areas. And in that regard, ultimately, like if the libertarians won, there wouldn't be a need for a libertarian party. Like very few of us want to do politics. We want to go and do other stuff, but we see the uniparty just taking more and more of our power while they blame each other for doing what they're doing based on if they're wearing team red or team blue. And we think it's terrible and we're fighting back on it. But if we could just go back to living our lives and letting you live yours, we'd be happy to do so. So when we see some of these moves in legislation going in the direction of liberty, we're very happy with them. On a relative basis, we still got a big hill to climb because we will not advocate for legal changes that help special interests. Special interests don't pour a bunch of money into our party. The Republicans and the Democrats have sold their souls and they sell them again and again and again to the biggest donor, the biggest special interest group. And so they get all the press, all the TV time, they own the media, and we're fighting back against that. And again, we are starting to make some progress. We've adopted a couple new strategies that are starting to pay off, but we got to stick with it and it's going to take time. If you're listening to this, lpnc.org, I strongly encourage you to come check us out. You might not agree with every part of our platform, but I promise you it doesn't matter who you are. We will fight for your rights without question and unconditionally. And we will stay consistent and stick to our principles. We're not up for sale the way the other two parties are.
That's awesome. All right, next question. Do you have plans on uploading more on videos? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna say it. Repeat this question. Do you have plans on uploading more videos to your party's YouTube channel?
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned that. I have a whole bunch waiting that I will be putting up over the next probably 2 months, and then our podcast starts back up in September. It's been a busy couple months for me. Just some family stuff and, like, not bad, but I got a kid who's about to be a senior in college. We had some travel, we had a surgery, and I've been doing a bunch of political stuff. We had convention, and I've also, coaching wrestling, high school wrestling for the first time in a while. I've just been busy, and I'm the one who's responsible for uploading the videos. So there haven't been many since the campaign, but I have a whole bunch ready to go soon.
All right, that's awesome. I guess one more question is there anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, the big thing is like come check us out. It's scary to leave your party. I understand the power of the social nature of human beings. Even for those of us who are most introverted and least social, there is something to it. And while it can be very easy to get annoyed with things your party are doing, the impulse of people, especially in the ballot box, when you push the button or pull the lever, whatever it may be, is to vote against the other party, even if you're not voting for your party. And what I want people to realize is that if you're voting for a Republican or a Democrat, you're voting for the uniparty. You're voting for the same old thing. So if you don't like the way things are, come check us out. What can it hurt? If everyone voted for us for a couple of cycles, if nothing else, the Republicans and the Democrats would have to start taking ideas of liberty seriously. Civil rights would have to be taken seriously. The preservation of individual rights would be taken seriously. And the government would be reminded that it answers to the people. We don't kowtow to the government. And that would go a really long way on resetting things for everybody. And unless you're an idiot communist like this new mayor candidate of New York, how can you not like that?
All right, fair enough. I still can't believe Zoran Mamdani has won the NYC Democratic primary. I thought he was going to lose.
Oh man, we'll see what happens. What worries me is that if he wins the mayorship and a bunch more New Yorkers move to North Carolina and then they're trying to vote their policies that ruin New York and down here, and I don't want to see any of that.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for this episode of the North Carolina Political Freedom Fighters. If you all have enjoyed, please hit the like button down below. Feel free to type in, comment whatever you want. If you want me to respond to your comments, hit the share button, hit the notification bell below if you want to be notified for more new videos. And I will also be putting all the links to the Libertarian Party of North Carolina social medias in the description below in case you all want to check them out. And with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.
Thank you so much.